I would like you to forget everything you think you know about how easy or difficult any foreign language is. See, the real question is not which languages are easy or hard in general terms, it's which ones are easy or hard for you based on the languages that you already speak. Now, hardly anyone talks about this, but you cannot just say that a language is easy or hard. It depends on the languages you already know, and this is the difference between struggling for years to learn a new language or becoming fluent quite quickly, even in a so-called difficult language. So this video is going to be an entirely new take on which languages are easy and hard to learn, and it might change the whole way that you look at language learning. My name is Olly Richards. I'm a linguist, best-selling author of over 20 language books, and by the way, more coming soon, and creator of the storylearning method. Now, after learning 8 languages myself and teaching over 100,000 students, I wanted to create a resource that gives you a really accurate picture of how easy or hard a language is based on your personal background, which languages you already know, because I think this is relevant information to know before you embark on a big learning project. It's also a potential cheat code for choosing a new language to learn if you want to do it really quickly. Now, if you just Google language difficulty, you get the same old boring lists. Tons of languages crammed into 4 levels of difficulty, all based on how many classroom hours you would need as an English speaker. Well, last time I checked, none of us have time to sit in a classroom for 500 hours, and it all assumes that we're starting from the same starting point, which is that we are English speakers and don't know anything else. But I know that you, as a viewer of this channel, know more than just English. So I created this story learning language difficulty chart to rank major languages by difficulty and also show hidden similarities between connected languages. But these are not just grouped by language family. That's far too superficial. Our connected languages are grouped by things like grammar, cognates, writing systems, or some other connection, some other similarity that makes it easy to learn that connected language. There's a lot of brain power that's gone into this, and I'm going to give you the full chart downloadable for free too. More on that later.
Sappiamo tutti che imparare una lingua straniera può essere difficile a volte, ma non dobbiamo mai dimenticare che è anche abbastanza normale fare degli errori nella nostra lingua madre.
Tier 1 is where you want to be if you want a quick language win. So these languages are super close to English, same alphabet, lots of words you already know, and grammar that doesn't twist your brain into knots. You'll be making sentences in no time, from I love pizza to leave me alone. So we are talking languages here like French, Italian, Swedish, German. In other words, the Romance and Germanic languages. Now, the key word here is familiarity. To learn one of these languages, you are not going to have to learn entirely new concept or even very different concept. It's all pretty familiar. Pronunciation, for example, is usually quite straightforward. There's the occasional curveball coming from languages like French or Danish.
Sisse og Frede sidder midt i en park ved siden af en mand.
If you take Spanish, for example, you're already going to know a lot of the words because of shared roots. Words like animal, tropical, chocolate, fantastic. In Spanish, they're almost virtually identical. The grammar can get a bit tricky with some languages like German or Latin, but the rules are usually pretty clear without too much guesswork. Now, if you take a look at page 2 of the difficulty chart, you'll notice these tier 1 languages are split into 2 different circles, and a couple of new languages are in there too. And what this means is if you know one language in a circle, it will be easier to learn another. Take Greek, for example. Even though Greek is a lot harder than French or Spanish, it's not a tier 1 language. You'll still spot a ton of familiar words here, especially if you studied Latin or a Romance language. That's because they share so many classical roots, and Greek even uses grammar features that feel familiar if you studied French, Italian, or Spanish. With these languages, assuming an hour a day of study and a bunch of extra exposure through listening or watching TV, you can easily reach a solid level in about 6 months. I did this myself in Italian in 3 months, and you can see the whole process here. So if you're not sure where to start, pick a language from this tier. Tier 2 still uses the same script or alphabet as English, and this matters because for any new language, learning a new alphabet or script does add a meaningful level of difficulty, because even if it's not too difficult, like Arabic, for example, with a similar number of individual letters to English, it is something that your brain has to wrap its head around. It just takes time for you to get used to, and so it does slow you down. So these languages in tier 2 use the Latin alphabet, so at first you will feel right at home, but get ready, things are about to get weird in the best way.
Kumusta? Ayos lang. Ikaw, kumusta? Mabuti. Ikaw.
In Tagalog, the verb or action word crashes through the front door first, and the rest of the sentence then scrambles to keep up. So you have to say things backwards, like ate I yesterday, and walked we in the rain. It's kind of Yoda-esque. There's always a bit of a plot twist in one of these sentences. Indonesian and Malaysian are very, very beginner-friendly languages. There are no verb endings, no tricky tenses, and you say things exactly the same way that they are spelled, so that's a win. Same thing with Swahili. Sounds beautiful, words are easy to say, but it comes with a dress code, shall we say. Noun classes. Every noun like car, tree, or idea belongs to a category. For example, the word child begins with an M because it's in the people category. People words start with M. Isn't that nice? And if there's more than one, they start with wa. It's a huge feature in African languages. By the way, did you know that Swahili has an absolute ton of words that come from Arabic? That is a sneaky hint about how our story learning chart works. And then there is Irish and Welsh.
Tamajar and Wad, Guttorianish, Ben Bladig Fagal, Galua, Neil Sugum Kintame.
Old, beautiful, magical, and the spelling? Well, let's just say, don't trust your instincts. These two will test you, but they've got a loyal fan base for a reason. Now, in this tier, you'll start speaking quite early on, but the sentence patterns are less predictable, which requires you to rewire your brain a little bit, and this does take time. With that said, you tend to get used to it quite quickly. They're fun languages, they're different, and totally learnable in about 12 months. Now, as you're starting to see how much easier language learning gets when you pick the right language, I want you to have something that's going to make it even easier. Now, I've been talking about this chart that we have developed here at Story Learning, and this is available for you now. What's unique about this chart is that we show how certain languages are secretly connected, and this matters because, as we already saw, the language that you already know determines how difficult another language will be, and this special language map helps you understand the shortcuts available to you by learning related languages, or at the very least understand why a language might be appearing easier or harder to you. If you'd like a copy of the chart to download, you can simply scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. It's completely free. It's part of my Story Learning Fluency Blueprint. Simply create an account, log in, and scroll down to bonuses, and you will find the language difficulty chart waiting for you right there. Now, back to the tiers. Tier 3 is where grammar starts to get poetic and a little bit chaotic. Icelandic is in this tier, and it's barely changed since the Vikings used it, which makes it beautiful and epic sounding.
Góðan daginn. Í dag ætla ég að tala íslensku og íslensku.
Það var eitt sinn ógnarlítið stelpuhró.
Icelandic is way harder than the other Nordic languages, by the way, but if you already speak Norwegian, Swedish, or Danish, those Viking roots they share will give you a small head start in Icelandic. These languages might look familiar, same alphabet, more or less, but grammar-wise, well, you are now well and truly in the deep end, because this is where cases really take over. Now, cases is where you stick extra bits onto a word and suddenly it means something else. Meet the Slavic trio, Polish, Czech, and Slovak.
Ile to kosztuje? How much does it cost? Przepraszam, ile to kosztuje?
Čeština a slovenština jsou velmi podobné jazyky.
And their spelling really keeps you on your toes. Check this out. It's just something about a beetle, I swear. Now, Latvian and Lithuanian kind of fly under the radar, but they've got some of the oldest grammar systems in Europe. It's pretty full on. You will see words changing in ways that your brain has never heard of. Now, as for Greek, well, it's the first language on this list with a completely different alphabet, but don't panic. It's one of the easiest to learn. What takes a bit longer is how the verbs change depending on who's speaking, when it happened, and even how polite you want to be. It is no joke there. In tier 3, progress can feel slow, but you'll get good at spotting patterns and memorizing endings eventually. And once it starts to click, it can feel very, very satisfying because it is a new world. In 18 months, you could be telling your own short stories in Greek.
Привет, это Ярослава, и это канал для тех, кто изучает русский язык.
Tier 4 turns up the heat. You are still dealing with tricky grammar, but now the script has changed as well. So enter the Cyrillic script. Cyrillic looks like Greek after one too many vodkas, but it's actually not hard. You'll get it in about a week. The grammar is less forgiving though. In Russian, the stress, the part of the word that you say louder, like the lao and louder, the stress can move around and it's unpredictable. The problem is they don't write it down, so you never know where it is. So you've got to train your ear. Just listen to native speakers every day, every single day, and you'll eventually get there. Oh, and Russian also has a case of the cases, where one word can get 6 different endings. Go on, pause if you want.
Здравейте, казвам се Миле, роден съм в София Bulgaria. В 1987 година.
Човече, which means person. That's the phonetic translation, but that's how it's written in Bulgarian.
Milomir, što te zapoznav.
Okay. Milomir.
Or just Milomir.
Milomir.
Yeah.
Bulgarian and Macedonian are a little easier than Russian. No cases, but then the verbs come in swinging. See, in these languages, when you say what happened, you also have to say how you know it happened. Like, did you see it? Did you hear about it? Just assume it. It's wild, for sure, a kind of verb that's rare in languages. But yeah, tier 4 makes you work. This is where languages start hiding clues in plain sight. But 2 years in, after about 2 years, your brain will be rewired. And remember, if all these plot twists and turns feel a little bit overwhelming, page 2 of the story learning difficulty chart shows you how these different languages are secretly connected, even when they look totally different. For example, take Russian and Polish. They use different scripts, so it's not there isn't obviously a shortcut, but on my map, you'll see that they're in the same bubble because they're like cousins. The two languages share a lot of vocabulary and the grammar works in similar ways. So if you know Russian, learning Polish becomes way easier than you'd think. It is a legitimate shortcut and it's not obvious from the outside, unless of course you have my story learning chart. Remember, link in the description for that.
Biz Hyde Park'tayız. Sadece chilling. What is chilling in Turkish?
Chilling.
Benim canım çok künefe istiyor aslında. Künefe?
Tamam.
Tier 5 languages, well, they look innocent enough. They use the same alphabet as English. The spelling is clean and there aren't any strange symbols to learn, but don't be fooled. The grammar in this group means business, and this is why it's in this tier rather than a tier before. So let's start with the big one, Hungarian. Hungarian grammar. It's a bit like a word swallowed an entire sentence and now refuses to spit it back out again.
There's no way in the world that I can pronounce this. This word is Vededly.
Is this word is Zaplatush? Zaplatush? Yeah.
Hungarian isn't just complicated, it's ambitious. It's famous for having 18 different cases, and that's just for one word. Finnish and Estonian, same vibe. Long word, no mercy. Turkish, well, it's lovely, but sneaky. One word can grow into an entire sentence if you're not watching it. Now, let's have another sneaky look at page 2. You see Turkish grouped with Azerbaijani in their own little circle? They have a lot in common. They have very similar words, grammar, pronunciation. In fact, a speaker of one language can generally understand the other, though it's easier for Azerbaijani speakers to understand Turkish. And then there's the wild card. Vietnamese.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn, mình là Khánh. Hiện tại mình đang sống ở London và mình đang là một dược sĩ.
Seems like the odd one out, doesn't it? Vietnamese has a unique rhythm you get nowhere else, and it's the last language here that uses an alphabet that you recognize, so be thankful. However, it introduces a major new challenge, which is tones.
Ba, 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 ba.
Every rise, fall, or curve in your voice changes the meaning completely. For English speakers, this is completely unfamiliar and really easy to mess up. Luckily, Vietnamese words are mostly short. So yes, tier 5 languages have lots of rules and take time to crack, but they're logical and regular at least. In my experience, you're looking at 2.5 years at least of consistent study to reach a good level in these tier 5 languages. And of course, if you already know one of these languages, well, it makes the whole learning journey so much faster.
Hello. الان کجا میریم؟ خب به من بگو میخوای خرید کنی یا کافه بریم؟ خرید اول بریم خرید.
Tier 6 is where the script or the alphabet walks out, slams the door in your face and says, you're on your own, buddy. So you are not just learning a language anymore, you're learning to read from scratch. Let's start with Farsi, Pashto and Urdu. They write from right to left, and in Farsi, most of the vowels aren't even written, a bit like Arabic. So when you see a word, you've got to guess how it sounds based on the sentence or from having heard it somewhere else. Urdu looks similar, but it shapeshifts. The letters change depending on where they sit in a word, start, middle, end. Different shapes every time. Hindi is the opposite. It goes left to right, and the alphabet is beautifully logical. Learn the 47 symbols and boom, you can pronounce anything, but don't relax too soon. The grammar, well, it punches you in the face. You will need different politeness words, different word endings for masculine and feminine things, and even flip the order of words in a sentence. Very, very sneaky. Now, for the real curveballs, we've got Georgian, Armenian, and Telugu, and also Mongolian. What is that pronunciation? It's Pretty fascinating. Each of these has its own unique script, some round and looping, some tall and vertical. Mongolian even gives you 2 options because they also write in Cyrillic. Go figure. Tier 6 is where letters get weird, but also wonderful. Grammar is layered, sneaky, and maybe just a little bit too polite for its own good. Plan for 3 years to be able to read, write, and speak with confidence, but you got this.
여러분, 한국인이랑 이야기하고 싶은데 어떻게 질문을 해야 될지, 어떻게 대답을 해야 될지, 어떻게 리액션을 해야 될지 어렵고 막막한 적 있지 않으신가요?
Tier 7 languages don't just feel different, they look like they came from another planet. Korean, for example, will give you Hangul, and if NASA made a writing system, it might look a little bit like this. The script is so clever, it was invented quite recently to be easy. You could genuinely learn it in a day. But Korean is a tier 7 language for a reason. First off, it has serious politeness levels, and this is where you start to get real distance from languages that don't have this. You can't just say thank you, for example. You have to choose from 5 different ways of saying thank you, depending on the person's age, status, whether it's your boss or your best mate. Get it wrong and you're being rude or weird. Also, Korean verbs, well, they stack. Take this word. It means I didn't want to go. 5 words in English, but in Korean it's just one long verb train.
אני חושבת שבתל אביב יש הרבה יתרונות, גם מבחינת תעסוקה וגם מבחינת חברה. עיר שמשלבת סביבה את כל מה שבן אדם צריך. במתחם קטן.
Hebrew writes from right to left and skips most of the vowels and brings you something new altogether. Roots and patterns. It's pretty cool. Most words start with a 3-letter root like this one, which means writing. Then you change the pattern to get new words related to writing, like spelling or letter or reporter. Thai, Lao, and Khmer throw you off in completely different ways. The alphabets, they're kind of long and twisty. There are no spaces between words, so reading feels like a race through a dense jungle. You can't just brute force your way through a tier 7 language. What can help is rhythm and repetition. So you watch or read the same short story again and again, for example, until your brain starts just spotting the patterns. That really is the only way to learn a language at this level, is just to spend so much time with it that your brain gets used to it rather than you trying to learn it in a logical way. I can help you with one of them at least. Korean, give it 3.5 years and you'll blow your own mind. Tier 8 languages look amazing on paper. They sound kind of incredible and then absolutely steamroll your brain.
السلام عليكم. السلام. ممكن أجلس هنا؟ تفضل. اسمي خسو، ما اسمك يا أخي؟ اسمي سيف الله. أهلا بك. أهلا بك.
Arabic is a grammar jungle. It's the same writing concept as Hebrew, except the version you write is not the one that people speak. Everyone speaks in dialects. When I lived in Cairo, I learned the most useful dialect, which is Egyptian Arabic. So I know that you can do it too. Remember I said that Arabic and Swahili have a lot of words in common? Well, this is why you'll spot them together on the chart, even though they're completely different languages with different scripts. You see, back in the day when Arabs arrived in East Africa, they used Swahili as a language of trade. In fact, Swahili was first written in the Arabic script. But it means if you know Arabic, you can quickly understand a huge number of Swahili words. Isn't that cool? Tibetan drops you into another dimension. The script is gorgeous, but what you see is not what people say, and it has wildly unpredictable pronunciation. Burmese, that's where the alphabet goes off for some kind of excursion and never comes back. Circular script, stacked letters, tones, no spaces between words, and grammar that feels totally alien if you are English. These aren't the kind of languages you dip your toe into. You jump in and build the parachute on the way down. But 4 years in, you're not just surviving, you are speaking, reading, and thinking in a stunning language that most people won't even try. You've heard that they are hard, but nothing really prepares you for a tier 9 language. This is where legends are made.
No, that's wrong. It's
Mandarin Chinese doesn't just have tones, it runs on them. There are 4 of these and it works like this. One syllable, like sure, can mean teacher, time, history, to be, city, and it all depends on how you say it, the tone. One tone slip and your history instead of a teacher. And the characters, well, you'll need about 2,500 to read fluently, but you don't need thousands to start. They are surprisingly logical and honestly kind of fun, at least at the beginning. Cantonese cranks everything up to 11 with 6 to 9 tones, depending on who you ask, and lightning fast spoken speed. Even Mandarin speakers struggle to wrap their head around Cantonese. But there is one language that makes everything else feel like a bit of a warm-up.
でも本当向こうでバイバイっても通じるんですか？
あんまり言わないです。
言わないですね。
バイ一つだけ。
ですよね。
バイみたいな。See you later.
Japanese, the one that everyone falls in love with, don't they? I certainly did. That's why I pushed for writing a book of Japanese short stories. 3 writing systems, thousands of characters, just like Mandarin, but a different way of thinking that requires you to become a different person, essentially. Each sentence feels like it was engineered to confuse you, and is defined just as much by what isn't said as what is said. And this is where the cultural element comes in as well. But somehow it is still absolutely beautiful and probably my favorite language. This tier is not for the faint of heart. You can expect 4 to 5 years of consistent study to begin to feel like you really speak a language at this tier. And there's one guy who knows this all too well. So he's already learned half of the languages on the list. And all he does is talk to people. It's a crazy story, and you can watch exactly how he does it in my next video.